Oh man, oh man, oh man. Last night, Chancellor Merz was a guest on Miosga, and he was specifically sent there by his own PR team to save the coalition and his chancellorship. But then Miosga asked two critical questions. The interview completely escalated and turned into the biggest disaster. Merz himself indirectly announced the end of his government and officially buried his chancellorship. What a sensation! So, grab some popcorn, and let's look at the four most intense highlights. When Friedrich Merz finished the interview with Karen Miosga last night, he surely knew himself what a huge blunder he had just made, and how he had buried his own chancellorship. I can just imagine him thinking, damn, I should have gone to bed unscripted like Hoka. Then the evening would have turned out completely differently, and I would have gotten more viewers. But unfortunately, Chancellor Merz was on ARD, and that was probably the worst end to his career. Although, actually, one doesn't have to say unfortunately at all, but rather thankfully. Thankfully for all of Germany. Because now, everything could happen very quickly. And in this interview, there were countless parts that I could show and comment on, but let's just focus on the four highlights. Otherwise, it would blow up this video. Let's start with the first clip. And I really had to laugh silently at that one. But do enough people, even in your own ranks, still trust you to bring these two poles together? I think so. The doubts are growing. Not in me, but in the coalition, also in the SPD. I tell both party leaders, do not underestimate the mood in the union. I'm throwing myself into a corner. The doubts are growing, but not in me. No, of course not. It's always everyone else's fault, and no one doubts Friedrich Merz. The only problem is that Merz has completely plummeted and is now the most unpopular politician in all of Germany. Merz's downfall in the Inser politician ranking, new political setback for Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who for the first time is at the very bottom of the latest Inser politician ranking for Bild. With only 28.9 points, the CDU leader slips from rank 18 to 20. He is currently the most unpopular politician in the weekly Bild Inser ranking. So, Merz is demonstrably the most unpopular politician, but no one has even a single doubt about him. Then I have to ask myself, what parallel universe does this guy live in? Did he drink too much before the interview, or what? But okay, let's continue with the clip, because now Merz names the one reason why everything is going so badly. Look here, if we look at the latest Germany trends, that is, a development, then shortly after the start of the government, 39% of those surveyed said they were satisfied with their work, and now only 21% say so. What do you sometimes think about that? You've already hinted at it a bit. Are we world champions at complaining, or do you take the discontent seriously? I naturally take the discontent seriously, and perhaps we will have to explain more about where we stand, where we want to go, and what the path there is. Wow, I'm about to fall off my chair here. So, the great discontent with the Merz government is not because everything in Germany is going so badly, and it's achieving less than nothing. It's also not because it has broken more than one election promise and is pursuing even more left-wing policies than the traffic light coalition. No, it's only because he hasn't explained his policies well enough. Or rather, it's because the population is simply too stupid to understand all his heroic deeds. It's because he's actually achieving great things, but everyone just keeps beating up on him. But now that will change. He will explain more, and then we will have the most popular federal government of all time again. And quite apart from the fact that you've already heard from my sarcastic voice that what Merz is spouting there is complete nonsense, one thing must be asked very clearly. What on earth good will it do if Merz now wants to explain even more when in the end he'll just lie to everyone again anyway. I mean, before the election, Merz also explained exactly what he wanted to do if he was elected. And no sooner was he elected than he broke all his election promises and lied to all his voters. But that is, of course, not the reason why Friedrich Merz is in such a bad position now. But let's move on to the third excerpt, and now every CDU member and every CDU voter should really listen very carefully and absolutely pull the emergency brake. What Merz is saying there is truly unbelievable. I got a very good result at the CDU's Federal Party Conference. I have a lot of room to maneuver, but I don't have the authority to kill the CDU. Holy cow, did he really say that? Yes, he did, he said, in all seriousness. I don't have the authority to kill the CDU. And the mere fact that Merz talks about killing the CDU should set off all alarm bells for everyone in the CDU, and Merz should be immediately replaced. I mean, if he were to say something like, "The SPD wants to kill the CDU, but I will absolutely not allow that," then one would understand. But if he says that he himself won't kill the CDU because he doesn't have the authority to do so, then that is a media disaster. This shows that Merz would stop at nothing and would even sacrifice the CDU if he had the authority to do so. A scoundrel who thinks ill of it, and I am really extremely curious to see how the CDU will react to this drastic statement this week, and how the party will try to sugarcoat or cover up this statement, because one thing we can be absolutely sure of now is that this statement is a godsend for the competition, and really all other parties will exploit it with relish. And that's why we're now coming to the last excerpt, and for me, that's the most drastic. Or rather, I have to divide this excerpt into two parts because they are so extreme. So let's look at clip 4 now, and then the bonus clip number 5. And I hope that we can pass the health reform in Parliament before the summer holidays. And I expect the same willingness to compromise from the SPD as we are showing. We are showing it. I have been very patient so far, also in dealing with the SPD. However, the SPD must also know that compromises are not a one-way street. We both have to make them. We still have a real relationship of trust, I would say. Yes, does that still exist? Trust in politics? Does it really exist? If it no longer exists, you actually can't work together in a government anymore. Ms. Miosga, I am not 150% convinced about everything, that I would say everything will now proceed as a matter of course, and as smooth as silk in the coming weeks and months. So, I don't know what you all think about this, but for me, this was a clear swan song for the federal government. Merz clearly emphasizes here that they have two completely different parties and that the SPD absolutely needs to pull itself together. Governing is not a one-way street, and he has had a lot of patience. Miosga clearly asks here whether Merz still has confidence in this coalition, and what Merz is stammering out there is truly abysmal. He believes, he hopes, he warns, and he even threatens the SPD that there is no left-wing majority in Germany. And at the latest, from the moment a federal chancellor threatens his coalition partner, everyone knows it's over. We won't get back together. Especially because for 2 weeks now, the CDU and SPD have been publicly clashing. This thing is over, and last night, with Merz's interview, the nail was truly hammered into the coffin of this coalition. They might still pull themselves together a bit to reach the critical 2-year mark, because after 2 years, all ministers then become entitled to generous pensions. But politically, absolutely nothing more will happen. And that's why we now come to the last excerpt, and in my opinion, this is the political death blow for the CDU, because with this statement, Merz officially says, the SPD has carte blanche, we can't do anything about it, and we have to keep crawling up their asses. What Merz is saying there is truly an oath of disclosure. Look here, has everyone understood by now that one can only survive together? I hope so. In any case, I say to all those who observe us from the outside and are close to us, abandon the hope that there will be anything like a minority government and toleration by the AfD. That is out of the question for me. I say to the SPD, there is no left-wing majority in Germany. So, there you have it. Merz states very clearly here that under no circumstances will there be a minority government with the toleration of the AfD. And with that, he excludes the only other possible form of government. He excludes the only thing with which he could put pressure on the SPD. Because as an ultimate resort, he could have said, if the SPD goes even further off the rails, then one simply dissolves the government and forms a minority government. Perhaps they would then pull themselves together. That was his leverage to reign in the SPD, his only leverage, and he gave up precisely this leverage with this statement. He is officially stating that he has no alternative and no plan B. And with that, he is signaling to the SPD that they can continue to do whatever they want, and the SPD will continue to exploit this carte blanche and even push it further. And the CDU, of course, will then plummet even more. And my prognosis back then, during the federal election, was that the Merz government would collapse after 2 years and there would be new elections. But after this Merz interview yesterday, that could now happen much faster. So, what do you say about that? Did you see this Merz interview? Was this the final nail in the coffin for the Grand Coalition? Yes or no? Feel free to write it in the comments below the video, and also leave a like if you enjoyed the video.